So I guess it's a good thing I did quit, you know.
And but didn't you run into somebody who was a fencer at one time when you were in the internment camp, or have I got that story?
No, that was when I was in the Army.
Oh, okay.
As I said, I volunteered for the Army, and they sent me to Korea.
Right.
And in Korea, I was with the 42nd Construction Engineers in Yeongdeung-po, just outside of Seoul. And I was in charge of the special services, which included sports.
Let me just get this straight. So you went. So the war was over. You came back to the States,
Right.
and you joined the Army right away, or
Right after graduating from high school. I
high school,
applied to
okay.
Harvard. I was admitted, but I didn't have the money to go.
Oh, I see.
And my dad hadn't been paid his reparations payments yet.
Yeah.
So I had to get work somehow. And so I decided to get the GI Bill, because that's what they said, as long as your war is on, you might as well do it. So I did it. And so I went to Korea. And in Korea, as I say, that's where I first encountered the sport of fencing.
Yeah.
And I was teaching this fat kid how to box, as I say. And he couldn't get the idea of a 1-2. So I thought, well, I'll simplify it for him. And I tried it with one hand. 1, 2. He said, oh, that's a lot like fencing. Roberts, what do you mean that's fencing? And he said, you know, fencing. No, I don't know, Roberts. What's fencing? With foils. With what, Roberts? I've never even used the term, you know. And he said, well, I hate to say it, but with swords. Whereupon I doubled up with laughter, you know, imagining Roberts with a sword in his hand.
Yeah.
You know, the poor guy, he couldn't even lift the thing. You know, and I asked him to show me what he meant. And he said, okay. He said, let's do it with a couple of sticks. He said, now you go ahead and try and hit me anywhere above the waist, except for the head. And he said, please don't go for the head, because my reaction will be automatic, and I'll defend myself, and then I'll try to hit you, because that's what I was trained to do. And I said, okay, Roberts, any part of your big fat body will do as a target. That's okay. So he said, okay. So he said, now on guard. Now, what does that mean? He said, just get ready. And he said, when I say fence, then you can come at me with your stick and try to hit me. Oh, sure, okay, Roberts, that's no problem. So I go at him, and after he says fence, and all of a sudden my stick goes flying in the air, and there's Roberts, you know, waving his stick right under my nose. Or do you want me to lay it on you there, Eric? Boy, that was a new game, you know. And so I asked him, what else can you do with that thing? He says, well, he says, we can hit with the tip. He says, I don't want to hit you with the tip of this, but, well, here's how you would hit with the tip. And he makes this long, graceful lunge. This kid who I thought had been uncoordinated. And he looked good doing it. And I said, well, is that for real? You know? And he said, sure it is. He says, you try it. He says, well, I said, well, first of all, what can you do with that lunge? He said, because, you know, I said, you know, that's like fighting with one hand only, and it's way out there in front of you. And he says, okay, pick up your stick, and I'll show you about how this thing works. And so he starts moving his feet back and forth in front of me, and slowly, I didn't notice it, but slowly his arm was extending. And all of a sudden, he makes this lunge, this big step forward. And I go to knock his stick aside, and all of a sudden, there's the stick right between my eyes. And he said, stop. He said, see, I could have hit you with the tip of the stick if I wanted to. That's how it works. So, boy, I wanted to take lessons in fencing right away. That was pretty neat. And he said, no. He says, you're somewhat of an athlete, and I don't want to teach you the wrong thing. My master taught me what I should do for myself. He said, I don't want to teach you what he taught me because it might be wrong. I know you're going to go to Harvard. They happen to have one of the best fencing coaches on the East Coast. So why don't you wait until you get back there? Well, okay, I took his advice.
And that was Rene, what was?
That was Rene Peroy, the
Peroy,
Harvard
yeah.
fencing coach, yeah.
Yeah.
He had been military champion of Europe with the épée and the saber. The foil was not used by the military.
Wow.
And he was number 2 in the world with the foil. I didn't find any of that out until much later. You know, but I knew that if Roberts was able to say that this was one of the best coaches, then Roberts knew what he was talking about. He eventually ended up in counterintelligence corps and ended up as a colonel or a general or something. You know.
So, was your time in Korea, other than fencing, relatively uneventful, or?
Yeah, except for catching pneumonia twice. Yeah. Yeah, it was uneventful.
So there was
I went up and saw the 38th parallel, and then came back down to Seoul again, and then when we were all leaving Korea. Boy, we were decamping like crazy, and I was among those that was all of a sudden sent back home, and I was discharged in Fort Lewis in Washington, and
Washington State?
Washington State, and then came back home here, and started Harvard the next September. Yeah.
So now you're at Harvard, and you.
And yeah, I tried out for the